The Capitals bounce back with a big win in game number 2.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Capitals as they get back and pick up a big win in game number 2. This is exactly what this team needed. After a tough loss in game number 1, and many people questioning if the Capitals would be able to survive round 2, they're back in it. What did we learn about the Caps a bit later? Tom Wilson, the emotional engine of this team. It was his mission to get the Capitals in the win column, blocking shots, getting physical, scoring a goal. Tom Wilson was one of the key ingredients in tonight's win. I'll talk about that a bit later. Surviving the storm. Listen, the Capitals did win this game, but there was an empty netter at the end, and the Hurricanes made it much closer than the box score might appear. How did the Capitals survive the storm? But just to get it going here, responding to doubt. And it's interesting. I was thinking about this throughout the day, that it's interesting that negativity and losses, it just permeates much more than a win. Like when the Capitals did not play well in game number 1, that stink in the air permeated through social media and everything, saying, I knew this Capitals team was fool's gold. They suck. I saw beat writers for the Capitals kind of getting beat up online, different beat writers, making fun of them, that kind of thing, that it was ugly after game number 1. But the feeling of the triumphancy, if you will, of game number 2 and all that entails is huge. And it's interesting that a win in game number 2 makes you forget a lot about what happened in game number 1. I'm talking about the shot differential and how the Capitals were greatly outshot, that it was much more of an even keel performance by the Capitals. And by the end of the game, I really feel like the Capitals are starting to figure out what the Carolina Hurricanes are doing. But the tough part is now it heads out to Carolina, and it's going to be that much more difficult playing in front of their home fans. But let's dive into the game tonight and what we saw. Like I was talking about, responding to doubt, a statement win in game number 2, a must win, if you will. And what do I mean when I say a must win? Is if the Capitals were down in this series by 2, say they lost both games at home at Cap One, that would have been an extreme uphill climb. But it was a bounce back performance that saw the Capitals defeat the Hurricanes 3-1 at Cap One to even the second round series. All is well. They took the first one. We should have taken them both, all things considered, but the Capitals evened up the series, and it's an even playing field yet again. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling confident. I think the Capitals are gelling. And I think that, like Tom Wilson, I think that there was just a feeling like he needed to be the leader. He is the future captain of this team, and I think there was a real feeling in his mind that I'm going to be the leader, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. You saw him lay in front of shots that hurt really bad when that puck went firing and hitting him, but he was willing to do whatever it takes. But let's be honest here. Game 1, it wasn't even close. The Capitals may have taken it to overtime, but they were outshot, outskated, and outclassed for most of it. Tonight was different. And like I said, to be clear here, it wasn't a trouncing of the Carolina Hurricanes, but they got the dub. Tonight, they look like a team trying to survive the series, not win it. And heading into game 2, the narrative was loud and clear. The Capitals can't keep up with the Carolina's pace. That's exactly the kind of talk this team thrives on, that you're not good enough. I think that got into their heads a little bit. People talking about them that, hey, this team isn't as good as everyone thought. So what? They won the Metro. They won the Eastern Conference. It's fool's gold, this team. Don't tell that to this team. Never doubt the Capitals. They're used to overcoming any kind of obstacle you throw in their way. From the puck drop in the game 2 tonight, there was a different energy. The vibes around this team weren't as loose. I think it was more determined that we will not lose game number 2. Still some nerves early on, but more composure. The Hurricanes came flying again, attempting 26 shots in the first period. And listening to the dreadful ESPN broadcast, if there's any justice in this world, we can listen to Joby or Craig Laughlin in the future. And I know I could probably queue up John Walton, but there's the delay and all of that. It's a lot of work. But at the end of the day, ESPN, it's not the best. And they were hard on the Capitals, saying, it looks like another performance to me from game number 1. What do you think? I think that looks like that's the case. It was frustrating to watch. But the Capitals didn't wilt. The shot total was 7-5 in favor of Carolina, was already a step forward compared to being outshot 12-5 in the opening period of game number 1. Spencer Carberry, who was just irate after game number 1 and he didn't keep his cool like we normally see him. Usually he's pretty even keel. He was short with reporters. That was mentioned by a lot of the different beat writers, that I think that he really conveyed the message to his team. We will not lose game number 2. You get out there, you do whatever it takes to win. And Tom Wilson was like, yes, sir. Message sent, message received. Let's get them, boys. And that was the case. And then, came the turning point in this game tonight. Connor McMichael, early in the second, a broken dump and attempt ricocheted off Shane Gostisbehere's face, and McMichael pounced. Connor McMichael, the guy, beast, getting the Capitals on the board first. He chased the loose puck, blew past the defense, and ripped a wrist shot that rang off the crossbar and in. Pure finish. Let's hear it. Connor McMichael, the kind of goal he hadn't always converted on this season until now. Game number 2. Let's hear it, Capitals fans. Let's go. His teammates mobbed him. You could feel the release, not just for McMichael, but for the team. It was a moment of, we can hang in this series. It's Rod Brindamore. It's Carolina Hurricanes hockey. They just pelt you with shots, and they're very stifling defensively. It didn't matter. The Capitals rose to the challenge. From that point on, the Capitals didn't sit back. They controlled pace better. They got sticks and lanes, and they started forcing Carolina to adjust. And that's what the doctor ordered. You got to know that there were people just pouring over the game film saying, what are they doing? It's not like they reinvented the wheel out there. It's a hockey game. How can we beat these guys? They did just that. So the biggest takeaway from this segment is the Capitals responded not with panic, but with purpose. McMichael's breakaway goal was the spark and the symbol of a team ready to push back. Not in game number 2, not in our barn. We're going to win this game, and that is exactly what they did. So Capitals fans, like I talked about, we're all down in the dumps after game number 1, and it's easy to kind of wallow around in misery. What they say is that gossip is easy to talk about, and good news isn't so easy to talk about. That let's do that. Let's just really hear it for the team that bound together and got it done. Tom Wilson, Connor McMichael, John Carlson, Logan Thompson. Let's hear it. Let's go, Caps. They did it in game number 2. The momentum is in their favor. And I know it's headed out to Carolina right now, and it's going to get really loud. Hey, the Capitals just got done playing the Bell Center. It doesn't get much louder than that. The Capitals can do it. I think they have this momentum. I think they can take game number 3 if they adhere to what they learned in games number 1 and 2. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about surviving the storm. This was no easy game. Make no mistake about it. This was not a trouncing of the Carolina Hurricanes. How did the Capitals survive the storm? I'll discuss straight ahead. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Sports 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops 6, and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite TV shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your TV. With Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and auto low latency mode advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds. You need to stay competitive. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. So do this. This is the next level in television watching and game playing. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controllers required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So in the second segment here, we're talking surviving the storm. And a bit of a change as that Ryan Leonard was not in the game, and insert Taylor Radish, getting back to the basics of the team, the roster that got the Capitals in this position in the first place. All things considered, I think it's the right idea. I think that Ryan Leonard is not there right away, and Taylor Radish looks like he really fit in. And I think that the team was playing better as a more cohesive unit, and ultimately one of the key ingredients to surviving the onslaught that the Carolina Hurricanes throw at the Capitals. So let's dig into the second half of this one, because this is where the game was won. We've talked all year about how special teams define the playoffs. I've talked about that all season, going all the way back to the fall. That, special teams are important in these preseason games, but yada, yada. I've talked about it. The later in the season, more gets drawn into focus. That was especially true tonight. Through 5 regulation periods in this series, neither team had cashed in on the man advantage. That changed at 1:54 in the third period. Brandon Duhaime, who quietly had one of his best games as a Cap, drew a hooking call against Brent Burns, and it took the Capitals just 22 seconds to make Carolina pay. On a set play, Tom Wilson slid a gorgeous backhand pass through the slot to John Carlson, who stepped into open space and snapped it into a yawning net. 2-0 Capitals. That was a moment that, that set play that was executed very well, and the confidence in that play and how the Capitals played in that second period in particular is what really kind of made me feel the Caps just might win this game. It was textbook execution, movement, vision, and trust. It was all the Capitals' first power play goal of the postseason, and the first one Carolina had allowed. That's a double victory in and of itself. The Capitals getting the win, yes, but finding a way to execute a power play goal against a very stingy Carolina team, that was worth a lot just in and of itself. But, what do we know? The Carolina Hurricanes don't quit. It's a storm that keeps circling, and the game was far from over. Just as quickly as the Caps gained control, things got dicey out there. There was a long defensive shift. Connor McMichael accidentally flipped the puck over the glass from the defensive zone. And I'm thinking to myself, Connor McMichael, not right now. What are you doing to us right here? Delay of game on the ensuing power play. Carolina finally broke through. Gostis Bear fired a shot from the circle that beat Thompson clean and cut the lead to 1. And that's when I was face palming. And I thought to myself, is this going to be a replay of game number 1 all over again? I was feeling optimistic in game number 1, despite the fact the Capitals were greatly outshot, that they were going to find a way to win the game. I didn't want this to be a repeat, and it wasn't. The Capitals had to weather the storm, but the momentum shifted hard. The Hurricanes smelled blood in the water. Luckily enough for the Capitals, they were able to dig deep and do the things that they did all season long, that it wasn't a turtle disappearing into its shell. They found a way to overcome. But here's where the new version of the Capitals showed itself. They bent, but they didn't break. Gone was the scrambling panic we saw in game number one, that fight or flight. Instead, they closed lanes, kept the structure, and blocked everything. Again, a tip of the hat goes out to Tom Wilson as a guy that made it his mission for the Capitals to win. 32 block shots by the game's end, with just about everyone sacrificing the body. I'm talking Dale Hunter hockey, brother, and that's exactly what we saw out there tonight. Tom Wilson had 2 of those blocks, and like Tom Wilson talked about, he's like, who's ever scorekeeping, you might want to check again. I blocked way more than 2 shots. He swore it felt like more. Even Logan Thompson joked after the game that Tom Wilson seemed to be everywhere at once. So to all the people that like to pigeonhole him as this goon, this tough guy, a fighter, that's all he can do. The key ingredient, the guy that stirred the drink for the Capitals this entire evening, was absolutely huge for the Capitals. Carolina emptied the net with just 2 minutes left and called the timeout. Then came the storm, and that's when I was worried. Sustained zone time, bodies flying, sticks swinging, but the Capitals stayed calm. And, there was physicality, and that was one of the things that I said would be what the doctor ordered would be for the Capitals to ratchet up the physicality. And we did see some of that. You saw Sebastian Aho kind of really try to take on Tom Wilson, and Tom Wilson put him in a headlock and said, there, little buddy, what are you doing? you know what you're doing here? This is not going to end too well for you. Ask Panarin if you want to. But it's interesting that, the physicality didn't need to get out of hand. It was just the right amount of physicality. And ultimately it would have been detrimental, I think, for the Capitals if they would have let that flare out of control. They won battles along the wall, clogged the slot, and eventually cleared the puck to Wilson, who buried the empty netter from distance to seal the win. And who else? Who is more deserving in this game than Tom Wilson to get the overtime goal, or not the overtime goal, the empty net goal? As he was the guy that was selling out, doing whatever it took to win this game, that it was a nice icing on top for him to be able to get it done. But the biggest takeaway in segment 2 is that when the Hurricanes pushed the hardest, the Capitals didn't crumble. Instead, their teams and their special teams, and they shot blocked, and it was a gritty way to win the game. The Capitals doing exactly what they needed to do to win the game, and that's what we're going to need to see from them in game number 3 as well. It's not over. It's not going to get any easier in this series. I think that, once this goes back to, or it goes to rather, Carolina, it's going to be that much more difficult because, like I say, fan participation is something that's not easily quantifiable, but it is something that the Capitals will have to bear. But the good thing coming out of game number 2 is they evened it up. It's even Steven. Now let the best team win. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Tom Wilson, the emotional leader and the engine of this team. If you take a look at him, he is a guy that lets his emotions all out. He lets them all hang out. You saw him grab Sebastian Aho's mouth guard out. That sometimes I don't think he can control himself. His emotions just run over. What makes Tom Wilson so important to this team, and why would I consider him the emotional engine? I'll discuss straight ahead. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments, and how could tracking their trends help you build your next bet? You take a look at the playoffs, and I understand that the Wizards are not playing in there, our home team. But if you want vested interest in all of these games, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, those games got that much more exciting. New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. In this final segment here, we're talking about the impact of number 43, Tom Wilson. Absolutely beast mode tonight for the Capitals, like I talked about in the show, doing whatever it takes to win the game. And why is he the emotional engine? Why is he the leader of this team? Let's finish this episode by talking about the man who made this win possible on every front. Good old number, Tom Wilson. Wilson has long known as the Capitals' physical enforcer. We know that. Some people refer to him as a goon, but this game and his game has grown into so much more. And that was evident tonight. We saw that in game 2. He was everywhere, logging the most ice time of any forward. Put me in, coach. Wherever you need me, I'll do whatever it takes. Just let us win. Leading on the penalty kill, setting up Carlson's goal, sealing the win with an empty netter, and throwing his weight around every chance he got. This is how you're going to win hockey games, folks. This isn't just, regular season, just, kind of play easy go lucky. No, this is what you need to do. You need to just buy in and just do whatever it takes to win. Physicality, laying out in front of shots, stifle, and just really close in on that Hurricanes team that likes to generate a lot of shots. But for Wilson, there's more than just his physical presence. It was his leadership that stood out. This was a captain-like performance. You could see him on the bench between shifts, talking to his line mates, directing traffic, and keeping people focused. Carberry said Wilson was leading the charge tonight, and it was not just coach speak. You saw how his team played well off of his energy. And that's why I think at the end of the day, many people, myself included, perceive him to be the next captain of this team. The current captain of the team, Alex Ovechkin, thinks the same thing. And Connor McMichael, I think in a lot of ways, looks up to Tom Wilson as a guy that, is closer in age and just understands his leadership. Connor McMichael called him the guy who always shows up in the biggest moments. It's kind of hard to argue with that statement. Logan Thompson said the whole building fed off Wilson's energy, and Ovi, who's been every version of Wilson over the years, simply said, quote, "He's our leader. He plays smart. He plays physical." And it's interesting that Tom Wilson took on that role, and what you didn't see was a whole lot of Alex Ovechkin in the latter part of the game. It's interesting, probably the analytics that maybe view it as a bit more of a liability since the Capitals had the lead and Alex Ovechkin isn't the best defensive player ever. So they needed someone like Tom Wilson to step up and play a big role. After the game, Wilson tried to deflect the attention. He wasn't out there for the accolades. He wasn't out there for the attaboys. He just wanted to see his team win. Said he didn't think he did more than anyone else. Shrugged off praise for blocking shots and diving in front of Jordan Staal. But that humility is part of what makes him so effective in the room. You got to think a guy like Tom Wilson, your presumption, if you didn't know him, is that he would just be this big-headed, arrogant guy. Not the case. And just based on those comments alone, that that's not the kind of player that he is. And all things considered, what he cares about isn't Tom Wilson. He cares about getting his team to win. It's not just about paychecks for these guys. That's a nice side benefit, but they want to win games. Listen, Tom Wilson could have gone anywhere and made a substantial amount more money, most likely. He likes the Capitals, and he wants this team to win, and it's evidenced out on the ice. He's not throwing hits anymore. He's throwing the team on his back when it needs it the most, and that's what they needed. They needed a guy out there tonight like a Tom Wilson, because if Tom Wilson didn't do Tom Wilson things tonight, I'm here to tell you the Capitals probably would not have won this game. He did the things that needed to be done. I understand the goal that he did score was an empty netter, but it's everything else that he did on the ice. His teammates everywhere, all at once, the leader on the bench, on the ice, being in the right place at the right time. When we talk about the playoffs so far and what has defined the playoffs. In the first round, it was Tom Wilson's hit in game number 4 on Carrier that changed the momentum. Isn't it interesting? In game number 2 of the second round, Tom Wilson yet again was the guy to take this team on his back and pull them across the finish line. That is what makes Tom Wilson such a dynamic player. So if you are listening or watching this show and you're not a big Tom Wilson fan, know that. And at the end of the day, if you found out he signed with your team, you would be the first person in line to buy his jersey. You can bet on that. But tonight, a lot of the praise, a lot of the credit goes out to Tom Wilson for an absolute amazing performance, getting the Capitals where they're at right now. To wrap up this segment, Tom Wilson isn't just part of the team's identity. He is the identity right now. Know that. And if the Capitals make a deep run, it'll be on the back of performances like his. And I don't think that's hyperbole. I don't think that is pumping his tires too much. I'm just calling it as I see it. What I saw out on the ice was a dominant win by the Capitals, due in large part to a team that was buying in. Tom Wilson leading the charge, learning, adjusting, overcoming. That they were drastically outshot in game number 1. They still outshot the Capitals in game number 2, but it was still more of an even performance. The Capitals did not let the Carolina Hurricanes get away with the things they got away with in game number 1. Am I saying that they're going to win the series right now? I'd sure like to think they are, but it's not going to be easy to get it done. The things that they have to do, learn, vacuum up everything that you learned in game number 1 and give yourself a pat on the back for a moment in game number 2, but learn the things that went wrong in game number 2 as well. Like I said, this wasn't a decisive victory. You got to remember one of those was an empty netter, that it was a hard-fought battle. But tonight, the Capitals got the best of the Hurricanes. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you covered 5 days a week. Available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.